Well, here's a news flash for you.
What news?
Tell us a story.
Yes, tell us a story.
What is this? Good news, bad news?
I've got the story. I've got the story.
Gone all summer without a scrap of news.
Good news and bad news.
That's good news.
If I'm gonna do this, I'll need my news team at my side.
News team, assemble!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Movie News Network, the official podcast of MovieNewsNet.com. I'm your host, David Wall, and joining me today are a few of the other writers for the website. First up, we got Fran J. Ruiz. How you doing, Fran?
Hi, thanks for having me.
And also, we have Darby Harn. How's it going, Darby?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me. So, on today's show, we will be going through the biggest film news of the past couple weeks, along with our takes on each story. After that, we'll wrap up with a bit of what we've been watching, and we'll each bring up a story we just can't stop thinking about. So, without further ado, let's get into the news. First up, we have a story about Mad Max. So in an interview with the New York Times, George Miller revealed some huge pieces of info about the next film in the Mad Max franchise. Apparently, it will be a prequel focused on the character Furiosa from Fury Road, but sadly, Charlize Theron won't return to the role due to her age. Miller said that he intended on using CG to de-age her, but he's not satisfied with the effects. So instead, Killing Eve star Jodie Comer is in the running to play the character, as is Anya Taylor-Joy from Split. So let's go to you, Darby. What do you think about this news? I know you're a Killing Eve fan.
Yes.
So what do you think about this news about Mad Max?
I'm really conflicted on this because on one hand, the idea of Jodie Comer playing this part is outstanding because she can do anything. On the other hand, it's odd that he seems to be abandoning Charlize Theron because of the CGI part, which works wonders in the MCU for characters and actresses who are much older than she is. So I don't quite understand that part of it. Maybe he just thinks that the character is going to be so young that it may not be very productive. I don't know. But I'm a huge Mad Max fan. Fury Road was outstanding. Furiosa is a great character, so I'm looking forward to it for sure. But we'll see, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, Fran? I mean, can they even call this a Mad Max movie if it's mostly about a young Furiosa who at this point doesn't know Max's character, right?
Well, the thing with Mad Max is that every entry in the franchise has felt like its own story. Every movie feels like a different telling of the legend of Mad Max, maybe aside from the first one, which was more of a origin story. So expanding this universe, especially after all the world building that we got in Fury Road, makes sense to me. So I'm okay with the idea of having just a movie focus on Furiosa. About the CGI part that Darby mentioned, I also don't really know how far back they are planning to go. But if it is like 15 years or more in the past, it makes sense to grab a younger actress.
Yeah, so Charlize Theron is how old? It looks like she's 44, and Jodie Comer is...
She's 27 or so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I am more in the camp of recasting. I feel like it usually works just fine. I kind of agree with him in the sense that The Irishman is slightly distracting, especially if you're going to try to make Charlize 15 years younger than she really is, or 20 years younger than she really is. And I've never seen Killing Eve, so I don't know. Like I'm sure she's a fantastic actress, and I'm excited to see it. So, and after Fury Road, like I really trust George Miller, so I feel like this is going to be something special. I'm excited that it's something different, that it's not quite just following Max. It'll be something new and kind of a fresh story. So we'll have to see. I feel like the last movie was so good and it was so universally praised that we should just trust George Miller. even after Happy Feet 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Fury Road is like a classic action film. And I think the characters are fantastic. I think they're really flexible. So I agree. I definitely trust his vision on it. And Jodie Comer, if it works out, or even if it's Anna Taylor-Joy, who I like, but Jodie Comer is outstanding. She would be great. Yeah.
I think that something interesting about the script itself is that they say that it was written about the same time as Fury Road. So it isn't influenced by the success of Fury Road.
That's really cool.
That's interesting when approaching a prequel.
Yeah, I thought I read that that he wrote it for Charlize so that she could maybe get into the character more. So that's kind of interesting to think that it might exist almost on its own from Fury Road. Yeah, that's very interesting. We'll have to see how that turns out. I'm excited. So let's get into the next story. AMC Theaters stock has skyrocketed after rumors of a buyout from Amazon. So apparently their stock rose 30% to $5.32 a share. This is all in the middle of a controversy with Universal Studios, talks of AMC filing for bankruptcy, and the company announcing plans to sell $500 million worth of debt. So let's go to you, Fran. What do you think? What is going on with AMC? They seem to be like everything's hitting the fan right now. Do you think that this Amazon buyout is even in the running? Is this even a realistic rumor? And do you think it's going to happen?
I think it makes sense. Amazon has been spending a lot of money they are buying a lot of movie rights, TV rights. It's not only about Lord of the Rings. The other day they announced that they were doing Ringworld, which also looks to be an expensive sci-fi fantasy TV show. And AMC, what they say about not wanting to work with Universal, I was like, what are you doing? You don't have many options after the coronavirus pandemic. With everything going on, saying no to Universal films doesn't make sense to me. And they were already having problems, as the article said. So I think this makes sense, both for Amazon and to get some place to put their productions, which are growing each day, on the big screen. And AMC, I don't know, we'll have to see, but it might be their only option.
What do you think, Darby? Do you think if this were to happen, is this ethical?
Well, I think it's a fascinating story for a lot of reasons, because we're in this sort of inflection point right now with theatrical distribution that was happening anyway, and then the virus situation's made it that much worse. So you've had this tilt towards streaming away from theatrical distribution. The virus has tipped it all the way over, and now the idea of Amazon buying AMC is fascinating because you have this theatrical model, which seems to be receding, but Amazon would understandably want a stake in it because the theaters will be around until the bitter end, regardless of what happens with streaming. But you have this eventual confrontation that's going to happen because Disney right now represents something like 40% of the market share of theatrical releases, and Amazon with AMC would represent something like 40% of the actual physical theatrical space. And I could see that becoming ugly really fast in the future if it were to happen, because Amazon already plays hardball with Disney when it comes to their DVDs and new releases on the Amazon website. So conceivably, that could get interesting as far as screens, dollar share, things like that. But we'll see if we get there, because I think depending on how the virus goes, the whole question could be moot, really.
I don't know if this rumor even has any base in reality. I mean, it's from Daily Mail. People kind of ho-hum Daily Mail. And so we'll have to see if that's even real. But I do feel a little wary of Amazon, who produces films, also being in control of AMC, one of the biggest distributors of films, I find that is just a little bit monopolizing, and it makes me feel uncomfortable as a consumer.
Yeah, the current state of affairs with theaters exists primarily for this reason, because in the past, of course, the studios did own their own theaters, Paramount, Columbia, etc., back in the day, and then due to the antitrust laws, they had to divest all of those because they were in control of releasing their own films, and so other studios couldn't get their films into certain theaters, and that ended back, I want to say, in the 40s, maybe the early 50s.
Yes.
So the idea that we're going back there potentially is interesting. It's concerning too.
Yeah, and I think I read that the U.S. Justice Department right now is kind of making a push to get rid of those laws and those restrictions. So we'll see how it goes. So let's go to our next story about Star Trek. So following the huge success of Star Trek Discovery and Picard, CBS is now preparing yet another live-action TV series, which will star Anson Mount, Ethan Peck, and Rebecca Romijn. Alex Kurtzman will once again oversee the show, with Akiva Goldsman penning the script. So I'm not a huge Trekkie, but I have a feeling Darby is a little bit into it. So Darby, what do you think of this new Star Trek TV show?
Well, this is outstanding. It's kind of been the worst kept secret in Hollywood that they were going to do this, but even so, it's great news. The reaction to this, just in general on Twitter, the other day when they announced it, was gigantic, and I think people really wanted to see this, and especially this idea that they're going to go back to that. Goldsman talked about going back to the episodic format of the original series, and whereas the new series on CBS All Access have all been serialized, and that's been successful in one way or another, but I think people have wanted to go back to that sort of every week is a new adventure Star Trek sort of formula, and the idea that they're going to do that with this is really exciting.
What do you think, Fran? Are you a Star Trek fan?
So. I watched some of the Next Generation movie when I was little with my father, who is a big fan. I also got some of the original TV show, but mostly it was J.J. Abrams' Star Trek what really got me interested in this universe. I jumped into Discovery not really knowing what to expect because I thought the marketing wasn't very clear. Was it gonna be more serialized? Was it gonna be more episodic? It was heavily serialized, but I really enjoyed it. I think the second season especially was great, but every time that you thought that you were gonna watch an episodic episode, they found a way to tie it to the main plot, and that's for me the flaw, I would say, that show has. But Anson Mount, Ethan Peck, they were great additions to the cast. I loved Anson Mount's Captain Pike, and everyone was sad to see them go when the season ended. So, like Darby said, this show had to happen. He deserved his own show. So, really excited about this.
So, do you guys know, this is just going to be on CBS All Access, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is CBS All Access successful? Has it found its audience? Because I remember when it was starting, like it kind of seemed like a weird, like I was like, I don't know if like many people are going to sign up for this. Like I don't know how many shows they have.
They seem to be meeting their subscriber goals. It's not as insane successful as something like Disney Plus, but they seem to be doing really well, and they continue to invest in the Star Trek franchise, which is great for a Trekkie like me. But because I mean, at this point, they now have as many series as they did in the '90s, which is insane. Looking
crazy.
back on it, but it's like. It's really cool. I think they've done a good job in general. I think Picard is almost great. Discovery is really good. This has the potential to be really good. Anson Mount's outstanding. Ethan Peck was a really good discovery. Rebecca Romijn is always great. So the idea that they're back on the Enterprise, it's a new story every week. I think it's really exciting. And the sky's kind of the limit there. I did read, though, recently CBS All Access is rebranding sometime this summer, so I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but...
Like, they'll change their name to something else?
Changing the name, yeah. I think that may be a product of the fact that they merged recently, remerged with Viacom, so maybe they're trying to figure out something that's a little bit more universal there, but not sure.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm not sure if CBS is outside the US.
Mm-hmm.
Because
okay.
Here, for example, Discovery is being distributed through Netflix. Picard was grabbed by Amazon Spain.
Interesting.
So for us, it's a mix because there is no CBS.
Well, that kind of saves you a subscription that you'd have to pay for, so that's nice.
I'm thankful.
Okay, so let's move on to our next story. And this is about AMC Networks, not the theater chain. AMC Networks recently acquired the rights to adapt 2 best-selling book series by author Anne Rice, The Vampire Chronicles and The Lives of the Mayfair Witches. Rice and her son Christopher will serve as executive producers. So let's go to you, Fran. Did you watch or read The Vampire Chronicles, and what are your thoughts on this?
I read some of The Vampire Chronicles. I didn't go through the whole thing, but it's something that I want to do in the future. I know nothing about the other books, but for me, this makes sense because The Walking Dead has been going for like 10 years now. They are doing all these spin-offs, the show is still going, but everyone can see that it's losing its momentum. So it makes sense for AMC to grab something big that can be easily serialized. I think that's what they are doing. They are saying, okay, The Walking Dead is coming to an end. Sooner than later, we have to find something else.
What do you think, Darby? Do you think that this is a good move for AMC?
I think so in the long run. It's actually really fortunate timing, too, because I know just a little bit from the publishing world that vampires are coming back into vogue after being a little bit, they've been... after the whole Twilight, they had a huge, surge in popularity the last few years, not so much. Coming back around, this could potentially be good timing for them. This is a big world that Anne Rice has with the vampires. I'm not super familiar with the Mayfair Witches part of it, but the vampires with Lestat, especially those early books, lots of characters, lots of stories, lots of history that they can play around in, literally thousands of years, so they can do pretty much anything they want.
Very cool. I just recently watched the movie The Vampire Chronicles, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty fun. I don't know anything about the books. I'm sure, like you said, it seems like there's some kind of huge history behind it. The movie seemed like there was a lot that they were just barely scratching the surface of. So I feel like a TV show would probably be the best way to tell this kind of story as opposed to films like they tried in the 90s. Perhaps, I don't know anything about these books, so I'm just spitballing here, but like maybe these 2 series could kind of like overlap in some way, or like, I don't know if they I wouldn't be surprised if AMC tried to put them in the same universe or something.
I would expect that. They're, as far as I know, again, not super familiar with Mayfair, but they're 2 separate book lines. She had originally written one of them under a pseudonym, the Mayfair part, unless I'm thinking... I could be confusing. She did have some books that were pretty risque back in the late 70s, early 80s that she wrote under her pseudonym. I want to say it's Mayfair. It could be wrong. But I could totally see where they would want to overlap these and kind of build sort of a Avengers of vampires, you know?
Yeah. Yes, we will get that portal scene at some point here.
Right.
Okay, so let's go to our last main story in the news about Matrix 4. So Variety is reporting that the 4th Matrix film will likely be resuming filming in early July. The studio currently has the actors on hold for an 8-week extension until July 6th. The production had begun in February and was shooting in Berlin until it shut down in March due to the pandemic. So what do you think, Darby? Is it too soon to start filming again?
I don't know. And I think the problem is that nobody really knows. There's so much uncertainty about all of this. I mean, I would love for them to start filming. I'd love for everybody to come out tomorrow and just say, "Yeah, we're going back to work and everything's back on schedule." My instinct is that's probably not going to happen. That this is super optimistic filming in July, unless there's something dramatic that reverses with the virus situation. Which, knock on wood, that's what happens. But my feeling is, given what we've seen as places reopen, there seems to be an upswell in cases immediately, and then the same thing with the sports, with the basketball, baseball, etc. They seem to be waiting as long as they possibly can to see if there's an opportunity to control this in a way that they don't expose their players and personnel. The films are going to be the same way. I don't know how that's going to work, really.
What do you think, Fran? Do you think this is really going to happen? Or do you think they're being a little optimistic here?
Well, Warner, we can say that they have been trying to be optimistic since the beginning of the pandemic. They straight up came out and said that Wonder Woman was going to release in August. They are holding on to that Tenet release date in July that everyone is talking about. And really, from an European point of view, as we were hit first with the virus after China and all that, I don't know. I think that things in the US are going way too fast. I think that the US is going to have problems with the virus down the road, and you are going to be rolling back some of the stuff that is being done right now. So I think that maybe aiming for a July filming seems a bit optimistic. I'd love them to start working on that as soon as possible. I really want to see something from that movie, but I don't see it. I don't see it right now. I don't see anything working back to normality in the US until late August.
So I'm looking at the Variety article. Actually, it looks like so they were going to be shooting in Berlin, but the cameras never started rolling. And so I guess it more depends on where things are in Europe than it is in the US. So we'll have to see kind of where we're at once we get to July.
That's true. The fact that they have to shoot in Berlin might be favorable for them, because things here are more relaxed right now. Germany did a good job of containing the virus, so maybe if they just focus on that side of the production while things settle down on the US, I think that things could work out.
All right, we'll just have to see. I kind of feel like this is going to get pushed once again, and these extensions are going to get extended once again. But like you guys said, I'm really excited for this Matrix movie. I have no idea what to expect, really. So if we get like an image or something, I will go crazy. Like, I'm so excited to see how this turns out. All right, so let's move on to our next segment. So during the pandemic, we've been hearing one story after another from all the big movie studios, and it's the same story over and over and over again, and that's the constant changing of release dates for their films. So we'll be covering the most recent disruption in the film business in our news subsegment, The Delay After Tomorrow. So this week, there are actually 3 big shifts in the calendar. First up is New Mutants. So the 20th Century Studios X-Men film, The New Mutants, which has been bouncing around the calendar for forever, delayed. Most of that had to do with Disney buying 20th Century Fox, I believe, and not being confident in the film. But it looks like they're actually going to release this August 28th, 2020, and they also dropped a new poster. And it seems like it's going to have a theatrical release because it said something about in theaters everywhere or something like that on the poster. Also, Hamilton, there was a live recording of Hamilton that Disney Plus was going to be doing, and they actually moved it up a year. So we're going to be getting that in July of this year. It was going to be coming out in 2021. Now we're going to be getting it in July. And then lastly, director Edgar Wright's mysterious next film, Last Night in Soho, has been shifted to 2021. Unfortunately, I was really excited to see that this year. This is a movie I've been looking forward to, but we don't know exactly when it's going to come out. Just it's been vaguely set for sometime in 2021. So let's go to you, Fran. Which of these sticks out? What are you most excited about or bummed about?
I think there is quite a bit to unpack here. The New Mutants, it's been like forever when I first saw that first teaser in the cinema in front of Thor Ragnarok, I think.
Oh my God, Thor Ragnarok?
That feels like forever. The first teaser came at the end of 2017. It feels like a meme. At this point, people just make fun of the situation. It keeps getting pushed away and away and away. But the fact that still they want to release it in theaters might be positive because, for example, Artemis Fowl, which got pushed away and then the pandemic hit and they just said, okay, we're going to dump it into Disney Plus because we don't think it's going to be very good. So I would say that Disney has a happy trigger finger, and the fact that they are saying we're going to stick to the cinemas with New Mutants maybe suggests that it's good and that maybe it can make some money in a summer that now has nothing really going on, it seems. So the date might be realistic and it might work out for them. About Hamilton, I've been wanting to see it for a while now. Difficult for me in this side of the world.
Right.
But having it on Disney Plus seems like a great idea, especially when they are having problems with other productions and they are putting out all these behind the scenes contents on The Mandalorian, now Frozen 2, having all this surprising stuff in there. I think it's an intelligent move for them. Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, I also really wanted to see it. The first horror film from him. So we'll see when that hits.
And what do you think, Darby? What do these stick out to you?
Yeah, I agree with Fran. I think the New Mutants one is the most fascinating. The Hamilton news is outstanding for fans of Hamilton. Moving this all the way up is a huge coup, I guess you could say, for Disney Plus. The New Mutants thing is just strange because if there was one film that was ideal for just dropping on the streaming platform, it would be this one. They seem to have written this segment of the Fox Marvel universe off, which leads me to think that maybe those rumors last year about the idea that they were trying to retrofit the New Mutants into the MCU somehow may have some merit if they're trying to get it out into theaters, if they're trying to salvage it in some way. Maybe this is going to have some connection to the MCU, or maybe they just want to capitalize on a film they probably spent quite a bit on, and like Fran said, is hopefully really good, because these are great actors in this, and the New Mutants are great characters, so I hope it is good.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those actors are not even going to be recognizable by the time this movie, because they're all so young, and by the time this comes out, they're going to be, they're full-on adults. But I feel like with New Mutants, it's just kind of like, I've been fooled so many times with these release dates that they've said it was going to come out, and now finally it seems they are confident enough to say that they'll put it in theaters. But I think they're knowing that when this movie comes out in August, most theaters are still only going to be at like 25% capacity. So they know they're going to be taking something of a loss. It's better than nothing, and it's better than just putting on Disney Plus. And maybe they'll put it in theaters and get a little bit of money from this limited amount of people that can even go see this, and then maybe they'll put it on Disney Plus a little earlier than they would usually. Hamilton, I'm really excited about. I saw the play in Chicago last year, and it was fantastic. But what's exciting about this is that I think Lin-Manuel Miranda said that it was very specifically filmed and creative and like really interesting to watch. It's not just like just like a camera in the back. So that'll be cool. And just the fact that Disney originally wanted to put it in theaters is enough for me to think, wow, this is going to be a cool production. So I'm excited to see that. And then, like I said, Last Night in Soho, it's unfortunate. I love Edgar Wright. So I really wanted to see this, but maybe it just means that he's confident that it's a really good movie and that it's going to make some money when it finally comes out. So let's get moving into our next segment. There was a ton of movie news that came out this week and last week, and so we're just going to kind of run through it all as quick as we can in our next segment, which is Quickfire News.
Okay, so Tom Cruise and Elon Musk's SpaceX, and along with the National Administration Space, they are teaming up to produce the first fictional film to actually be shot in space. It's supposedly to be an action-adventure thriller. Some people started thinking maybe about something along the lines of Gravity. I don't know what they are going to do, but for me, I had this running joke with my girlfriend as we were watching the Mission Impossible and the Fast and Furious franchise. We said, which one of these franchises will go first to space? Because Fast and Furious can at any point say, okay, this plot point is a satellite in space and Toretto has to go up there and disable it or something. So it makes sense that Tom Cruise is going to space.
So Disney Plus is going to be producing a streaming series based on the Percy Jackson novels by Rick Riordan. And I think this is a great thing for fans of the books, which I'm not super familiar with, except for that they center on this kid, not surprisingly named Percy Jackson, who is the son of Poseidon, kind of deals with Greek gods. And the thing that's most fascinating about this is that Rick Riordan apparently was live tweeting his meetings with Disney last year as they were happening and started a make Percy happen kind of hashtag trend on Twitter. So it's pretty aggressive negotiations on his part. It seems to have paid off. So
yeah, usually people don't get rewarded for campaigning that hard, but good for him. Phil Lord and Chris Miller have signed on to helm the adaptation of the next novel from Andy Weir. Right now, it's titled Project Hail Mary, and Ryan Gosling is attached to star as a lone astronaut in space who is tasked with saving the planet. Does that sound familiar for an Andy Weir novel?
Yes, it does.
So I'm excited about this. I love Lord and Miller. So honestly, I feel like we kind of got screwed out of seeing Solo, their version of Solo. So I'm excited to see a somewhat serious live action film from them.
M. Night Shyamalan has announced an ensemble cast for his next film. It will star Elisa Scanlon from Sharp Objects, Thomasin McKenzie from Jojo Rabbit, Krypton's Aaron Pierre, Hereditary's Alex Wolff, and Vicky Krieps from Phantom Thread. We don't know much about the film yet. I would say that Thomasin McKenzie did a great job in Jojo Rabbit. For me, it was the big revelation of that film, but all the child actors in that film were great. And Alex Wolff, he was fantastic in Hereditary. Like that, the crucial scene that we all know, and what comes afterwards is some great acting from him.
So this is another Disney Plus announcement, which has to do with National Treasure. Jerry Bruckheimer has said that the film series, I guess, is coming back possibly as another film, or maybe a series. I want to say it's a film.
It's a film plus a separate Disney Plus series.
Okay, yeah. So there's quite a bit going on here. So this is kind of cool. I actually like these films. They were sort of Indiana Jones with / conspiracy theories. So I guess now is the perfect time for it. I don't know. So we'll see.
The new Scarface reboot has just found a new director in Luca Guadagnino, known for films like Call Me By Your Name and Suspiria. The most recent draft of the script was written by none other than the Coen brothers, which has me very excited. And Guadagnino is also working on directing a sequel to Call Me By Your Name and a new adaptation of Lord of the Flies. So he's pretty busy right now. Somehow he's going to squeeze in a Scarface reboot here. Or I am kind of disappointed because Diego Luna was supposedly going to be playing Scarface, which sounded really exciting to me. But then he dropped out, I think, in February. Now I've been hearing rumors that Michael B. Jordan might be playing the role, which also is kind of exciting. So I'm excited to see how this turns out. And I think Luca is a really great director, so with a lot of talent. So I think it was like Antoine Fuqua was going to direct this at one point. So I'm glad we're getting somebody with a little bit more of a voice to kind of put this together.
At some point, they had David Ayer lined up to.
Oh, yeah.
So this is like a huge step up.
Yeah, it's just been kind of so many people have been attached to do this. I'm excited that there's another name, but we'll see if he sticks.
Okay, so Cate Blanchett is in talks to join Lionsgate's Borderlands based on the popular video game. This makes sense because she has just worked with Eli Roth, who joined the film in order to direct it. She starred in The House with the Clock in its Walls, I think it was called, along Jack Black. That movie, I think it did okay. It didn't get raving reviews, but for a first family film by Eli Roth, which is like on the opposite side of the spectrum, I think it did okay. Well, Borderlands could make a good film. The thing with this, if you are not familiar with the games, is that they are totally crazy, style-wise. So when I think of Borderlands, I think maybe of someone like Taika Waititi, someone completely crazy about style. Eli Roth can do the violence part of Borderlands. I don't know how the script is gonna go, but having Cate Blanchett there is a good starting point to get people interested.
So Robert Downey Jr. along with his production company with his wife, Team Downey, are producing an adaptation for Netflix of Sweet Tooth, which is an outstanding comic book series by Jeff Lemire that ran early 2000s. I want to say it wrapped up in 2013. So it was a not limited in a normal sense series, but it sort of had a end point that he got to. It's about this kid named Gus who's kind of a weird mutant who has deer antlers, and there's other sort of half animal, half human kids. It's very good. I think it's going to make for a really interesting series. It's sort of ideal for sort of a streaming format, so really looking forward to that.
Animation director Genndy Tartakovsky will be working with King Features on a long-fabled Popeye adaptation. It's been a passion project for a long time for him. It was in development at Sony until he left the project due to creative differences. We did get a really cool animation reel that he released of this, and the look of this film is pretty amazing. It looks a lot like the original cartoons, but somehow translated to CG, which I think is always really impressive. I'm excited for this. It's unclear if it's the same project that it was at Sony, now that Sony doesn't have the rights. And right now there's no studio behind it, so it's still kind of up in the air if this will actually get made. But it's good to know that it's moving forward, at least in some way.
Okay, so Arnold Schwarzenegger is returning to the Predator franchise through a video game. Predator Hunting Grounds was released last month to mixed reviews, but it seems like they have a plan in place for downloadable content featuring some famous characters from the franchise. We'll see what they do in the future. For me, it's funny because when they tried to make Predator 3 long ago, that didn't work out. Predators, if you can find the first draft, it's around for a while. You can see that they wrote an ending, a cliffhanger ending with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And also for the Predator, Shane Black's movie, they also wanted to do that reveal at the very end of the movie. And they tried a lot of stuff, it didn't stick, and Arnold said that they came to him and he was like, no, this part isn't big enough, I won't bother. So
maybe this is a hint that he'll come back for the movies, but it is a little
maybe he's
odd.
come around.
some more great comic book related news. Audible is producing an audio version of the Sandman comic book series by Neil Gaiman, which includes just an outstanding cast. I mean, this is insane. So you got James McAvoy as Morpheus, who is Sandman or the Dream Lord. Kat Dennings is Death. You've got Taron Egerton, Andy Serkis, a million other people, Samantha Morton. Neil Gaiman is playing the narrator. And it's pretty expansive. It covers the first, this is just the first part, Gaiman said, covers the first 3 books, first 3 volumes in the series. Seems like there's going to be more. It's great news, and it's a great signal for the series, which I believe is still in progress at Netflix, streaming series they're still talking about. So knock on wood that's all moving forward.
2 comedy legends have passed away this week. Ben Stiller took to Twitter to announce that his father, Jerry Stiller, has died of natural causes at 92. He was known for his roles in Seinfeld and Zoolander, and he had a really great comedy duo for a long time with his wife, Ann Mira, called Stiller and Mira. Also, comedian and actor Fred Willard has passed away at the age of 86. He was known for his roles in Christopher Guest comedies like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, The Mighty Wind, and as well as the Anchorman films. Also, Lynn Shelton, the director of Hump Day and Your Sister's Sister, as well as a bunch of episodes of Mad Men and a bunch of other TV series, has died from an unidentified blood disorder. Definitely going to have to go back and watch some Seinfeld and watch some Christopher Guest movies right now. And I haven't really seen any of Lynn Shelton's work, but I'm going to have to check that out as well. Next segment on the show, we're going to get into a little bit of what we've been watching. Let's go to Darby first.
So lately I've been watching Killing Eve, which is, for my money, is one of the best shows on TV. I'm also a fan of Making the Cut. For some reason I can't explain. I just watch that show. I love the design stuff. And then of course Clone Wars. The last season of that's been outstanding.
Yeah, I also watched Clone Wars. The final couple episodes of that were really, really, really cool. The way that they wrapped it all up was great for fans of Clone Wars, or also just fans of Star Wars in general. I've also been watching the behind-the-scenes show for The Mandalorian, which is called Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. It's pretty good. It's kind of like a roundtable discussion with a bunch of really cool behind-the-scenes footage. It hasn't really dug too deep, I don't think, into what I want to know about the show yet, but I think we're getting to that. Especially what I want to know is I want to see a little bit about the tech that they use to make it. The volume is what it's called, using Unreal Engine to kind of create the environments of the show. I'm really excited to see that, and I also want to see like a lot of the puppetry and stuff like that they did for the show. I've also been watching the show called Primal, which is a animated series by Genndy Tartakovsky, and it is crazy, guys. Have you guys seen this show?
I haven't seen it, no.
Yeah, I binged it, and it was great. I'm really hoping it gets a second season because it's unlike anything on TV right now.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to watch.
It's a very rated R, brutal, hand-drawn series set during the time of the dinosaurs, except there's humans there as well. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It's pretty crazy. And it's streaming for free on Adult Swim right now, which is kind of cool. So I watched all of that a couple days ago. Movie-wise, I watched this movie called Guns Akimbo, starring Dan Radcliffe. I really didn't like it. It's a movie where Dan Radcliffe lives in this world where people watch like a televised streaming Hunger Games, and he gets put into this world, and also someone nails handguns to his hands, and he has to participate in this kind of battle royale style game, and I just didn't really have that much fun with it. I did watch this movie called Roar, which was very interesting. It's a movie from the 80s that didn't get released until 2015. It's starring Tippi Hedren and her daughter Melanie Griffith and a whole bunch of real lions. And it's like a snuff movie. Like they got literally attacked by these lions during the production. I'm pretty sure Tippi Hedren got scalped. A bunch of people, and it's like on camera. It's all it's like the most. I think they described it as the most expensive home movie ever made. And it was very upsetting and very weird and not great, but also a really interesting piece of history that I'm glad I watched, even though it was cringy in a lot of ways.
I think that a bit of history behind that is that the producer was crazy about lions and all that, and he went to Africa to live with his wife, and they were like, okay, maybe if we can write some kind of very small script around all this and use our house to do this crazy movie. And somehow it got made. They convince all these people to come by and not get eaten by the lions and just stumble around for like an hour and a half.
That's pretty much it is. It's just them kind of rolling around in a house being attacked by lions for an hour and a half. It's fascinating. I don't know if I recommend it, but I kind of do. I watched it on Vimeo on demand. It's kind of being pushed by a bunch of different small independent theaters right now throughout the country. So that's kind of cool. So I rented it for $10 and it went to support the Music Box Theater in Chicago, which is a theater that I've been to a million times that I wanted to support while they're closed. Yeah. So go ahead, Fran. What have you been watching?
Okay, so I came back to watch Dinosaur, which was an early 2000s animated film by Disney. It didn't get good reviews, I think, back then. Nowadays, I don't know even if you can find the Blu-ray, I'm not sure. But Disney is dumping everything into Disney Plus, so you can check it out very easily. The film itself is interesting to see because they stuck to these realistic designs of the dinosaurs, aside from the fact that they have to talk. But it's a post-apocalyptic movie. I don't know how you really sell that to kids because when you watch The Land Before Time, that was completely animated, and maybe it makes sense. But this movie, with all the realism, the bad dinosaurs are more frightening than the Jurassic Park dinosaurs. So I can see why it failed, but it's a fascinating watch, and it's okay to come back to it now with different eyes. Watch Minority Report as well. It's a movie I wanted to revisit for a long time now. The most interesting thing about this film is what Steven Spielberg does with the camera. There is a lot of cool stuff with the camera in this movie. Also, the story itself is very interesting. You think you know where this is gonna go, and maybe you're gonna get one twist, but then in the span of 10 or 15 minutes, you get like 3 or 4 twists. Very satisfying.
We get a really good performance from Max von Sydow in that movie too, who passed away this year.
I totally forgot about him in that movie. He's great. And then I rewatched Pain and Gain, which I think is one of Michael Bay's best films. He has this very extravagant style and how he deals with America in his films. And this story was perfect for him because it was a giant satire about the American dream. And I think that I haven't seen a Dwayne Johnson performance as good as this one. He was great in this movie. All of them were great, Mark Wahlberg even so. But Dwayne Johnson, amazing stuff. Also, I wanted to watch this new animated Mortal Kombat film that they have pushed out. I don't know if it's going to be the first of many. But for a movie that lasts like 70 minutes, it was surprisingly well built, script-wise, in the sense that they tell a lot of stuff and they do a lot of world building in a short amount of time. Also, it's very bloody. So, coming off Primal, which I watched recently, this was like another bath of animated blood. When it comes to TV, I've been watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm currently season 2. Is this crazy anime adaptation of a famous manga. The plot, I wouldn't describe anything at all. I think it has to be seen to be believed. But for a show that goes so off the rails, I think it also has a very clear view of where it wants to go and has some surprising European influences. Last, I've been watching What We Do in the Shadows, which I think is a fantastic show, almost as good as the original film, is not better.
Interesting. I love the original film, and I've never seen the show, so I probably should get on that.
Totally worth it. It's great.
Very cool. All right, so our last segment before we wrap up is a little thing called What We're Hung Up On. We're going to talk about one story that we just can't stop thinking about, that is an interesting or weird story that we just wanted to talk about. So why don't you go ahead, Darby?
Yeah, there's so much I'm hung up on that doesn't have anything to do with entertainment, but the thing that I think the story I've been thinking most about as the week has gone on is this interview Josh Trank did with Polygon, where he talked about sort of the fallout from Fantastic Four. And it was a really fascinating insight into his career. He's someone with a tremendous amount of talent, tremendous amount of ambition, who to me at least sort of seems like his own worst enemy. And to kind of watch that play out, his career was exploding with Fantastic Four. He got what apparently was the Boba Fett job for Star Wars. All fell apart at the same time. Now he's back with this Capone movie with Tom Hardy. Seems to be a good film from the reviews. So good for him, but I think it's fascinating to kind of see how those dynamics play out at that level.
You go ahead, Fran. What are you hung up on this week?
Well, this goes in line with the previous news about Schwarzenegger coming back to the Predator franchise through a video game. Now Peter Weller is coming back as well to the RoboCop role in the newest DLC for Mortal Kombat 11. They are continuing the story from that game, which was surprisingly good. But they also adding a new guest character, and now they are going to add RoboCop. They got Keith David to voice Spawn. They got, I think, Robert Englund back in 2012 for another Mortal Kombat video game to voice Freddy Krueger. So it's surprising the amount of love they are putting into these guest appearances, reaching out to the original actors to bring them into the fold. I think it's as surprising as the Predator story to see Peter Weller coming back after all these years, not for a movie, but for a small appearance in a video game. But I appreciate it as a Mortal Kombat and RoboCop fan.
Interesting. I'll have to check this out. It's so interesting that they have these big movie characters in Mortal Kombat. Okay, so for mine, Akiva Goldsman just came out with this news that apparently back in the 2000s, he wrote a script for Batman versus Superman. It's not the one that we got with Zack Snyder, but he described it as even darker than the Zack Snyder version, which is interesting to me. He described it as the darkest thing you've ever seen. It starts with Alfred's funeral and just goes downhill from there. Oddly, it was going to star Colin Farrell as Batman, which I think is kind of bizarre. But even weirder is Jude Law as Superman, which I just don't see. I love Jude Law, but I can't see him as Superman at all. And then it was going to be directed by Wolfgang Peterson. So I'm just like, I'm just imagining this bizarre, weird, dark Batman versus Superman film that apparently was going to happen in the 2000s. I'm really happy that we got Christopher Nolan's films instead of this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the 2000s, they felt a bit weird with the DC stuff because there was also this Justice League film with no build-up being developed by George Miller, which would have been maybe interesting. But it seems that Warner, outside of Batman, they were just throwing everything against the wall, and nothing really stuck outside Nolan's films.
Right. Yeah, so I'm honestly, like, I didn't really like Batman versus Superman, and I don't think I would have liked this one, but maybe I would have liked to view it once, like I did with the Batman versus Superman that we did get. So that'll do it for this episode of the Movie News Network. If you like the show and want to help us out, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, share it with your friends. So, Fran, where can people keep up with you on the web?
Well, you can find me at my personal Twitter at Radioactive Jaguar. Mostly I write in Spanish, but there is some English stuff in there too. Well, I deal with movie news and all that. And you can check out my written stuff for the movie news at the website. And also I'm doing some retro video game reviews for the Star Wars News Network.
Very cool. And Darby, how can people follow you?
The best place to find me is my website, which is www.darbyharn.com, and it's mostly where I kind of talk about all my fiction and novels, short stories, things like that, but I link to my other the websites I work for, and at Darby Harn on Twitter, where I'm usually talking about something or subtweeting something, so you can find me there.
Very cool. And again, I'm David Wall. In addition to writing for the site, I'm a video editor and stop motion animator. You can check out my work on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can follow me at Davis_Wally. Also, I co-host another show called the No Guff Podcast, where my wife and I take turns introducing movies to one another. So feel free to check that out as well. If you like this podcast, try out the Resistance Broadcast. It's a show by our sister site, Star Wars Newsnet, and it goes deep into discussion about a galaxy far, far away. And as always, for more up-to-date news stories, be sure to regularly check out movienewsnet.com.